Dustin. Is again a pleasure having you here. You basically gave me my first job. You gave me the opportunity to talk about the Vikings and actually getting paid for it, which is just amazing.
Hmm.
So like for you to introduce yourself, talk about you, what you do, and also I would like to ask you how is your family doing?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, you deserved the chance at Purple PTSD, so don't give me the credit. You earned it.
Thanks.
I'm doing great. The family's great. We just got back from Norway about a month ago, and then we're going to Hawaii in about 2 weeks. One of my close friends, Wes Johnson, who's part of Vikings Twitter, his family has a house there, like a guest house. We're going there. Let's see. Otherwise, I've written about the Vikings for about 4 years. I've had the show with Bryant McKinney coming up on 4 years. And then been a Vikings fan since 1996. So we're coming up on 30 years for that bad boy. And then I have a YouTube show of my own, Vikes Now, that I collaborate with Yannick Eckhart from Germany. Tyler Ireland is our producer. Brevin Bain, he goes by Brevy Brightlights apparently on Twitter now. So that's the video arm. And then the writing piece, I write all day on VikingsTerritory.com from dawn till sunset and even in the middle of the night sometimes. And that's where, if folks want to follow like the real written content, it's just a constant stream of everything that's happening with the Vikings. And we're coming off of a really exciting offseason. It's been a kind of shitty 2 or 3 weeks here,
Yeah.
but the offseason was delightful. It was filled with change. In my opinion, the competitive rebuild is over. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm 40 years old. Let's talk about these Vikings.
So I'm going to introduce myself, Dustin. So my name is Gabriel. I am the creator of Minnesota Vikings Brazil project,
Oh, really
and
sweet.
I've been a Viking. Yeah, I've been a Vikings fan since I guess 2009
Okay.
when I saw Adrian Peterson play for the first time, and of course, I went crazy. So it's been a long journey to start creating content about Vikings here in Brazil. If I'm not mistaken, we start in 2017, I guess, and haven't stopped since then. I am 27 years old until next week when I turn 28, and it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Oh, yeah, it's an honor for me to be here. So you must be one of the ones that always wins the Vikings Twitter award when Brazil takes the best international
Yeah.
account. Yeah, that's one of your
Yeah.
okay. I was wondering who the hell gets credit for this because it's always
It's one
just
of
like
ours.
it's always the whole country that seems to rally around the voting process. So, all right, well, I know Enrique, so that's good. But it's nice to meet you too, sir.
And actually, it's not just Vikings fans from here. Like every Brazilian fan of the NFL support. Of course, you retweet everything, but
Mhm.
like everyone votes for Lucas, which is the account I think
Yeah.
the account that won
Oh,
in
okay.
2022, I guess.
A
But before we
shout out
start,
to Viking Sincero.
beijo, Lucas.
Yeah.
Before we start talking about the Vikings, just a couple more questions about you, what you do.
Hmm.
I always had this question. I don't know. I guess I don't know why I just didn't ask them like sooner.
Hmm.
But I wanted to ask just how your podcast with Brian McKinney started. And it was the podcast that I've joined once, and always wanted to know like how it started, how Brian got involved as well. Just so if you could talk a little more about that.
Yeah, so in 2020 is when I started. When I decided, like one night, I kid you not, a Friday night, I was like, I'm gonna go on Vikings Twitter and I'm going to have a voice, damn it. And there was a guy named Ted Glover who retweeted one of my tweets, and that's when I took off. It was just some random stat, and then for like 6 straight months, I would post like 15, 20 stats per day about the Vikings over the last like few years worth of their numbers. And I got a decent following then, and the vikingage.com asked if I would write. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And I wrote one thing about Diggs leaving. And I thought that would be like my mark on the internet, and then I'd be done. And they're like, all right, when's the next one? And I was like, oh, you want a next one? So I stuck around there. And then Vikings Territory, the founder at the time, he has since passed away, Joe Johnson, lured me over to Vikings Territory with a Godfather deal. Was just like offered leaps and bounds more than anybody else paid. And I was like, this seems a little too good to be true. Well, it wasn't. He backed it up with like an immediate paycheck. And in the middle of that, I got a message on Twitter on a July day from Believe, a guy who worked for the Believe network, BLEAV. And he said, we'd like to partner you on a show with Bryant McKinney. And I was like, I was still like really new to everything. And I thought this was a joke or a scam. And so I proceeded gingerly thinking, all right, there's going to be something where I have to pay or something. And no, I met Bryant on a Zoom call in July. It was right during like the pandemic. So I had to find like a restaurant that was open that day to talk to him on Zoom. And yeah, we've been doing that since August of 2024. And we record during the season every week, and then off season about every other week. So yeah, it was just because I had a following on Twitter at the time. Believe wanted to get that show off the ground. And as you probably remember from your time on the show, Bryant's like this big marshmallow type of guy. And so he's friends with everybody. And that includes like the people that he's met on our show, like myself and Sally and Ron Saw. So yeah, it was just by, I guess, complete accident that they chose me. And I couldn't have asked for a better guy per his personality and McKinney.
So there's like a couple of accidents between us two, right? Because it was an accident for me to end up in the Believe.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. My next question is about Vikings territory. I want to ask how you end up in there. I think you already talk about that a little bit, but if you can.
Sure. So at the Viking Age, that's like a fan-sided website. In 2020, I was writing there about an article a day, and then I decided, let's see if they'll let me write 2 a day. And I always had to get like my topics approved by their editor, which was fine. But then Joe Johnson, who was the founder of Vikings Territory and Purple PTSD, he sent me a message and told me like this large percentage of earnings I could keep from that website if I switched over there. And he said you could have full creative control. You pick your topics. And I was like, I don't know. This all seems way too generous. But it turns out he was just a really generous dude. So he plucked me away from the Viking Age. And because Vikings Territory isn't some big corporate website, it's Joe and now Joe's family. And then, I write 90% of the content on there. We don't have to like split the profits with some like big entity that's like ESPN or something. So basically he found me because I had done decent work on Viking Age, and it's just a really cool spot to read because we have a variety of writers. We'll have different opinions on things. And we try to keep everybody in the loop at all times on the Viking stuff. And like I said a couple minutes ago, it's been fast and furious over the last week about bad things and a couple interesting things. Usually on the NFL calendar, the end of minicamp until training camp is like the only dry season for Vikings football. But because of the tragedy with Kyrie Jackson and then Jordan Addison shenanigans, business has unfortunately picked up.
We'll talk a little more about this Addison UI later. It was a question that I was already going to ask, but you also mentioned this, that during the pandemic you got quite famous in Vikings Twitter, especially in Brazil. You really got famous in Brazil by not just posting stats, but like replying with when somebody just said something stupid or dumb. I wrote not true, but just sometimes it was just something dumb. What inspired you to start doing that? Not just posting the stats, but like reply for no, you're talking nonsense. I will show you what's really going on.
Oh, well, that answer is really easy. Kirk Daniel Cousins was the reason, because at the time there were these really weird narratives that were not true. If they were true, I wouldn't have given a damn. Like you don't see me going around defending Sam Darnold right now. Like he's not that good. I don't need to defend him. There's nothing to disprove. But with Cousins, there was always these dumbass narratives that said, hey, the guy only does well in garbage time. And all you have to do is peel back the numbers to figure out that's not true. And then they also claimed that he was a dink and dunker, that the only time he was good is when he threw check down passes. And I thought to myself, like, I'm watching these football games. That's not true at all. Like, what games are you watching? So there was so much of that in 2020 and 2021. It kind of quieted when Kevin O'Connell came aboard, or maybe when the Netflix show came out. Both of those things like just kind of went away because they weren't true in the first place. But yeah, the sledgehammer thing came about where I would post the Triple H gift, the sledgehammer, because there was some sort of Degeneration X something, and I looked up a Triple H meme or GIF, and the only thing I could find at the time was the sledgehammer. So I used that, and that took off. So yeah, I'm not as feisty on there anymore, mainly because Kirk Cousins doesn't work here. But yeah, I used to really just not understand how people would watch Kirk Cousins football games and think that the guy sucked. Like, for me, he always was and probably will be about the 12th, the 13th best quarterback in football. And I think because he got the guaranteed contract up front in 2018, people wanted him to be legendary, and he's just not. But I always thought it was my duty to dispel all the bullshit that people put out there about him, because most of it wasn't true. So yeah, I don't know if there wouldn't have been Cousins on the roster. I don't know if I would have done so much of the cocky replies, but they used to really get on my nerves because people would just say the stuff that was false. Like, oh yeah, he's a 500 quarterback. Or, I mean, just the stuff that wasn't true rubbed me the wrong way, because I didn't want people just to go about their day thinking, hey, that quarterback they got's a dink and dunker stat patter. It never made sense to me.
It's interesting that you say that about Cousins, because again, my next question is about Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Kirk Cousins time in Minnesota is over, what's your final assessment of his career in purple and gold?
I enjoyed the era because he brought the utmost consistency and stability. But then again, I never expected him to be a top 5 guy. I knew from Washington he was going to be pretty darn good. At the time, we still thought we had that rip-roaring Zimmer defense. So I totally understood the marriage that Rick Spielman was trying to do. You'd keep that Zimmer defense for a couple more seasons. You get a guy who's guaranteed to throw 28, 29, 30 touchdown passes, and we'll see how the chips fall. So, but I will tell you this. The moment the Vikings lost to the Giants, and I'm not talking about his 4th down decision at Hawkinson, the moment the Vikings lost to the Giants was when I was ready to move on and try something different. And again, it had nothing to do with Cousins was phenomenal in that playoff game, and nobody cares. All we remember is the 4th and 7 play with Hawkinson. He was the reason that we were in the game to begin with. But at that stage, that was January 2023, age was the new thing. It was that Cousins was going to be 35 years old. This summer, he's going to be 36. And anytime a quarterback gets to that age, they can fall off kind of like Roethlisberger did or Drew Brees did approaching 40. And I just don't think Cousins was one of those elite tails of guys who's going to be a badass when he's age 39 or 40. He seems like a guy that would start to fall off around 36, 37. So, and then he got hurt. And I knew that afternoon that's it. Like, they're going to go in a different direction. So I am very grateful that Cousins was the Vikings quarterback for those 6 years. I probably would have found a way to wrap it up after the Giants game. I wanted CJ Stroud last year from the draft. I have that in writing all over the place, not because he's good now. That would have been a little expensive for the Vikings to find, but there was a brief time on the calendar where CJ Stroud kind of fell to like 5-6 pick. That's when I thought he could be gettable. I felt the same way about Drake May this time. The Vikings weren't able to get him. But yeah, I would give the Cousins era in Minneapolis, probably a B+. And for most of my Vikings fandom, we're always doing hopscotch between new quarterbacks, and Cousins made it so we didn't have to do that for 6 years. And now we all just cross our fingers for however long that JJ McCarthy can be another beacon of stability.
Man, I would say something. Whoever wrote the script that we're using is a genius, because again, you already mentioned the player that we're going to talk about.
Good.
And why I say that? Because I wrote this.
Yeah.
So as you just mentioned, DJ McCarthy, what was your evaluation of him in college, going into the draft, and do you think he has the abilities, the tools that be the quarterback that I'm searching for like 7-8 years. You're searching for 30 years, and older Vikings fans are searching basically their whole lives. And do you think he can be this player?
Yeah, Thor Nystrom really sold me on McCarthy in terms of the enthusiasm. You can just tell by watching the tape that McCarthy can be really good. It's just that when we started the draft cycle back in December, when we realized the Vikings probably were in the playoffs, McCarthy was always a second rounder. And we were like, hey, it'll be kind of sweet if we could get him in round 2. And then he won the national championship with Michigan, and he got talked into the top 10 for a while. They're almost into the top 5. And I just always prefer Drake May's upside because to me, he is a better, I guess, pure thrower of the football. Like, I don't think Drake May is going to be bad in the NFL unless the Patriots just completely defile everything about him. But at the time, I was willing to give up those 3 first-rounders for Drake May. As I look back at it now, 4 months removed, I'm glad that they didn't do that. I'm glad that they got Dallas Turner and McCarthy, and for the price, they traded a lot of the draft class away, but they didn't have to give up the precious first-rounder. So I'm really excited about McCarthy. I will say this. I don't know if we're going to get to this topic. If it was up to me, I would start the guy right away. I know that it seems like it's kind of a foregone conclusion that Darnold's going to play against the Giants and however long after that. But I agree with Randy Moss yesterday, who said, like, just let him go. Like, I don't care if the Vikings finish 3-14 and McCarthy is the quarterback. I would rather get him started now so that when we get to 2025, it's go time. Like, all right, we got those learning curves out of the way. So yes, I'm really excited about the McCarthy era. I love the youth. It got on my nerves to the utmost last year when we were talking about Hendon Hooker, who was going to be 25. I really wanted the Vikings to get a young quarterback and groom him. They're doing it a little bit 1 year later than I would like. It would, to me, if somehow McCarthy scored the upset this summer and it's him over McCarthy, I can't express how exciting week 1 would be with him, because I mean, he probably won't be that great, but the Vikings have never started a rookie quarterback in a week 1 game. I don't think McCarthy will win the summer camp battle. But yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about him. And I'm also going to keep tabs on Drake May to see if I was right there with the Patriots.
Man, but the best place for a rookie quarterback, I think it is Vikings. Man, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T. Hawkinson, Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, plus Aaron Jones. So, man, just play. Just go to the field and play.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I said on my show a couple times that we are going to know for sure if McCarthy is good because there are no excuses. You have the best wide receiver in football, Jordan Addison, who we think will get his poop in a group. Hawkinson has 4 years left on his contract. You have a former quarterback as the head coach, and then you have Josh McCown, who mentored Sam Darnold and the like in New York. And so then you have the 2 franchise tackles and Darrisaw and O'Neill. So to your point, Gabriel, everything is in place. There's not going to be some mystery in 2028 about, God, is McCarthy going to be good? Everything is there. And I really don't know what the Vikings could have done any differently to set a guy up to succeed. So that we're not going to have a big mystery in 5 years about, well, McCarthy didn't have the best situation. Yes, he does. He has like a situation from heaven right now.
Yeah. Just changed a little bit of topic. For the first time in so many years, the team is in a healthy salary cap situation. Mm-hmm. So how do you think Kwesi and the front office will navigate in the free agency in the next year? And now that the team has money to spend.
So let's see. How should we tackle this first? They're not going to have $100 million. For some reason, this spring, we talked about that a lot. They're going to have over $100 million in cap space. It's like, no, they're not. They got to sign players this year. They got to sign Jefferson.
Yeah.
They got to sign Darrisaw. Yeah. So they'll have about half of that, which will still be like top 5, top 8 money in the NFL. They're going to have to nail these free agent picks next March because they don't have much of a draft class. They'll get a compensatory for Kirk leaving. They'll have a first, and then 2 fifths. So we'll have a condensed draft class. Now, I even before seeing the Vikings season this year, I'm almost certain that Kwesi Dafamensa will trade down next year to get some of his draft picks back. So when we get to free agency next year, I'm going to guess that defensive tackle is a big thing for us. Depending how cornerback goes, CB, we'll have to explore one of those next to Byron Murphy if he's back and next season. And then we'll see how the running back experiment goes with Aaron Jones. So the Vikings will have a really large piggy bank. It just won't be quite the 100 million that got floated back in April and stuff.
I've seen this topic being talked about in actually a couple of different places, but you, Dustin Baker, if you had the power to do it, would you give contract extensions for Kwesi and or Kevin O'Connell this year? And if so, for how long?
Okay. I am not anti Kwesi. There's some people that don't think he's very good at his job, and I'm not one of those. I love how he's changed the salary cap in 2.5 years, so that when we start to look at the next offseason, we don't look at the very bottom of overthecap.com and we're like, oh God, we're 22 million in the red. We got to cut people before even thinking about signing. I hated that era, at least looking at that part of it. I don't think they'll be forced to re-sign either one of them before this season. I would, if I was the ownership, or in Kwesi's case for O'Connell, you probably want to see how this season plays out. What you basically want is hopefully get some sort of peek at JJ McCarthy so we can start to know if he was the right pick. And then if the vibes this year are exciting, like remember 2014 when Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback, it was a 7-9 season, which isn't good, but it was really exciting because Bridgewater was there. That's kind of how I see this team going. If I had to decide today, yeah, I would extend both of them probably for an extra 3 or 4 years because I'd want them to see the McCarthy experiment play all the way through. I think Kevin O'Connell, for the most part, is universally loved, but because of the damn 2022 draft class, people aren't high on Kwesi. And I don't know. I guess I'm a little nicer of a guy. I give him a break. Like that was his first thing on the job. He didn't have his scouts. He got better with the next draft, and we think he got good on this draft. So I can understand why some people dislike the draft class from that year. But if it was up to me, I would wait to see how this year plays out to extend either one. But if I couldn't, I would not have any problems extending them. Especially, wouldn't it be like horrendous if they didn't like extend Kevin O'Connell? Somebody would hire that guy in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
My next question is about this off-season.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you rate the Vikings off-season between 1 to 10?
Ooh, okay. I don't know if I've been asked this one. I really like it. They didn't get me a defensive tackle, so I can't give them a 10. I thought the trade for Dallas Turner was a little expensive, basically giving up everything but the first rounders. So without seeing how McCarthy is, or how this season played, I would say an 8.5. You remember how we used to always ask for offensive guards during the Dakota Dozier era? It feels like I'm starting to do that with defensive tackle. Like they've got Harrison Phillips. He's great. But since Kevin Williams, we're talking 11 years, they'd never sign an impact defensive tackle for like the guy next to nose tackle. And I thought for sure, because Christian Wilkins and Grover Stewart and Eric Armstead, all of these guys were available. Oh, they're going to get one for sure this time. And they didn't. And so at some point, somebody in that building is going to be like, you know what? We can get a defensive tackle too. We can do that for ourselves. And I'm going to love the day that happens. Maybe it's even the draft next year. So I would say an 8.5. It certainly wasn't perfect. I had to warm up to the Sam Darnold signing because A, it was $10 million. And then B, I'm a Nick Mullins guy. I think if you were going to do a patch over quarterback, you might as well do it with Nick Mullins. But they like Darnold. I'm okay with that. So I'll give it an 8.5. And that's mainly because now we have financial flexibility. It was time, in my opinion, to say goodbye to Cousins. Danielle Hunter leaving hurt, but they really improved at edge rusher, which nobody saw coming. They have all of a sudden all of this depth at outside linebacker. And it's like, where did that all come from? You got Grenard and Van Ginkel and Turner and Jihad Ward and Gabriel Murphy and Andre Carter and Patrick Jones. You're like, man, a couple of these guys are going to get cut. And we're going to be mad about it.
I think for
and
maybe 3 or 4. Sorry. Go shoot.
no, I just wanna say finally we have a kicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for like 3 or 4 episodes during free agency, I was like, man, I just want Christian Wilkins.
Mhm.
He played under Flores before. He can be the guy for the team. And then heartbreak when he signed with the Raiders.
Mhm.
And it was a very expensive contract, but I was like, maybe the Vikings could have just a little bit more, but yeah, I think there's no use for crying for spilled milk.
Mhm.
Uh, I think this to me is like a more obvious question because I think this is true. But do you think this draft class will define Quizzy's legacy as the Vikings general manager?
Oh yeah, and it's not even the draft class; it's McCarthy.
Yeah.
He did it to himself for Turner. So Turner has to be almost a Pro Bowler to be worth all of those draft picks. So that's on him for trading that much. Again, I don't have a problem with it. I'm glad Dallas Turner's on the team, but Kevin O'Connell's especially, but both of their job securities, I think, are attached to JJ McCarthy. And if McCarthy, like my standard for McCarthy is he's got to be at least as good as Dak Prescott. Why do I say Dak Prescott? Because to me, he's the next one above Kirk Cousins on the ladder of power rankings. And I don't want just Kirk Cousins again. I want somebody better. And to me, Dak Prescott is a smidgen better than Cousins. So I believe that McCarthy needs to be as good as Prescott, hopefully a lot better. And then that will define their employment. But yeah, if McCarthy sucks or everybody got this wrong, guy looks like a moron, yeah, I wouldn't expect either one of them to be around too long. And I think it's especially pressure cooked for O'Connell because he and JJ McCarthy have like the exact same personality, and you can just see O'Connell's fingerprints all over that draft pick, like the optimistic guy. And yeah, but I think as a twosome, the only thing that matters about their job security and the only thing that matters about Vikings football for the next 3, 4, 5 years is whether or not McCarthy is good. If he's just mid, then we're going to, do this Cousins thing all over again where we debate the guy. The Vikings are really overdue to have a quarterback that they drafted be the real deal. And you just think as a law of averages that eventually one of these guys that they draft would end up being a top 10, a top 8 guy. So that's why I'm so excited about this era is the guy's so young, and we finally went and tried the build the team around the guy in a rookie deal idea.
So let's talk about defense right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's your expectations for the Vikings defense in this year 2 under Brian Flores?
I have a lot of questions or I'm unsure about how the offense will look. But for defense, I don't have those questions at all. And I have like 3 reasons for it. So last year, the defense was good. It's just that the final 3 games, maybe the Bengals game, if you want to include that, the Vikings defense sucked in the last couple games. And because that was our lasting impression, we forget how damn good they were in the middle of the season. From weeks 4 till 14, they were the best defense in football per EPA per play. And this was all in Flores' first year. So if you pull Brian Flores' resume from the Miami Dolphins days, when he got there in 2019, the Dolphins that season under Flores, their defense ranked 32nd per expected wins added. And by the time 2020, the second season got over, they ranked number 7. So we already have this resume of improvement from Brian Flores that he's proven he can do with Miami. And then on top of it all, they went and got a bunch of sweet players from Andrew Van Ginkel to Jonathan Grenard to, Blake Cashman, Shaquille Griffin, Dallas Turner. So they went and, in my opinion, improved the personnel. So I think that the players are there. And then I think that the precedent is there for Flores improving a group from year 1 to year 2. And then to top it all off, the Vikings have coaching continuity for the first time in a decade. This is the first time since like 2015 into 2016. It's the same head coach, the same offensive coordinator, and the same defensive coordinator. We always have one of those guys promoted or one of the guys is fired. So I think the defense will have the continuity, and I already know it has the players. And I think by the time that we get to October, maybe in the middle of October, we're like, God, this is a defense first team. Like, defense is carrying this team. That's how I feel the 2024 Vikings will look.
Again, it's funny that you mentioned Jack Griffin because he's the subject of my next question. Do you think he can still be a good? I put CB1, but in case you think Murphy will be the first corner, like a good outside corner in the NFL. He started really well with Seattle, then kind of downward trajectory with the Jaguars and Texans last year. Do you think he still can be a good corner, or do you think the secondary will be kind of like more of the same than last year that was kind of bad throughout some parts of the season?
I sure hope that he can. Last year, the only real rotten part about Brian Flores' defense was that they ranked 32nd in the NFL per completion percentage allowed. So, if it always felt like the other quarterback stepped back and completed a pass, well, it's because he did. The Vikings ranked dead last in that. Now, Shaq Griffin, I don't think I think folks will be pleasantly surprised by how decent he is. He's got the leadership part down, and there's still some young cornerbacks in the cornerback room. I think he'll start, but I don't think he's going to be a total badass. I think we would have seen that from him by now in his career. I still think Byron Murphy is a better cornerback, and I would love for somebody else to win the job at training camp, whether it's Andrew Booth, who surprises us all, Caleb Evans, if he has a turnaround, or who am I forgetting there? Mekhi Blackman. I don't know if he's going to play more in the slot or in the outside. Mekhi Blackman was so underrated last year. We spent all year excited about Ivan Pace as a rookie, which was okay. But Mekhi Blackman was just as good by the numbers. He didn't have the volume or the playing time quite as much as Ivan Pace, but I'm really high on Mekhi Blackman. And I expect Griffin to start, and I think he'll be good, but I don't think he'll be great.
So, how much improved do you think the team's front seven is compared to the last year? Can Ivan Pace Jr. take the next step and be one of the better linebackers in the league?
Yes, I think that he's kind of setting the pattern that if you're an inch too short or an inch and a half too short, I don't think that matters. They're even trying it again with Gabriel Murphy, an edge rusher who's too short for the position. His arms are too small or too short as well. I don't think Ivan Pace will have a regression or like a sophomore slump. I think he has the motor. We know that he has the swagger and the cockiness to be good. And I think he's in a perfect system with Brian Flores. And if he was able to grab a starter's job as an undrafted free agent, and then he was able to reign free in Brian Flores' defense, I think he was a captain there when Jordan Hicks was out. Yeah, I think he'll be just as good. And he's already starting to get some respect in some of those linebacker rankings that we've had in the past month. He nibbles at the top 25, if not included. I think one of them even had him at number 20. So, yeah, I think we're going to the legacy or the legend of Ivan Pace will continue to grow. I will say it sucks that we don't get to see anything about Brian Asamoah. We were all excited about him, too, and he just seems like a total footnote.
He's Gabriel's best friend.
Oh, Brian Asamoah?
Yeah. Now, switching sides of the ball, I'm going to ask you this question because I asked the same one to Tyler Furness when he came here, I think, last week. And he said it was a good question. So, I'm going to ask you this basically to everyone I talked to. Considering that Robert Tonyan had like an incredibly awesome spring, according to every beat writer, and we've seen what he can do when he's targeted. And TJ Hawkinson maybe is last time that when we were anticipating, and he's one of the at least a top 5 tight in the league. Combining this with a worsened wide receiver depth, do you think the Vikings will rely more on 12 and 13 personnel this year on offense?
Ooh, yeah, that is. I can see why he liked that question. I think it will be similar to how they operated last year. I don't think that because TJ Hawkinson probably will miss the first 6 games or whatever it is, I don't think they have to fundamentally change much. And you have to also remember that the Vikings don't have a KJ Osborne clearly defined WR3. I think Brandon Powell will probably win that in name, and then they'll have a committee WR3, like between Sherfield and those guys. I would say that the personnel, I think it'll be similar to last year. We know Tanyan is a reliable pass catcher. He's obviously not as dynamic as Hawkinson, but the Vikings quietly have like 8 tight ends. It's really weird. Like there's so many of them. Like, and they feel like they like showed up out of nowhere. The guy from Argentina, Reyes, N'Keal Harry converted, and then Tanyan's in the house now, and that's on top of Munt and Oliver and Muse. There's just a bunch of tight ends right now. If I had to guess, it'll be Tanyan, who is the pass catching TE1 to start the season. Josh Oliver will do his normal regimen, the run blocking, the dirty stuff that nobody cares about. And then Johnny Munt, they love him. So he'll always be in there for about 2 targets per game, something like that. I don't think there will be a drastic change in the personnel settings just because Hawkinson is out. Now, if they had went and signed somebody like Tyler Boyd, or they had drafted somebody like Luke McCaffrey, where we could really get excited about WR3, I might say they switch it a little bit or get heavier on, 3 wide receiver personnel. But one of the things that really bugs me about the offense is the WR3 spot is such a mystery that if something happens to Jefferson or Addison is suspended, well, then who's going to catch the football in the first 6 weeks? It's going to be, Jefferson, Powell, and Tanyan. We're supposed to have Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. So it's not so much that I'm obsessed with the 3rd wide receiver. It's that if something bad happens, like you fall asleep on the freeway and you get suspended, or, you get hurt, then you don't have much depth. So that's one of the reasons I'm really curious to see who wins the WR3 job, because whoever it is, they must really like that, or they already know who the guy is. They had like 12 different free agents they could have signed, about 20 different guys from the draft that were WR3 caliber guys, and they got 0 next to Trent Sherfield. So I'm paranoid that if Addison is suspended, that Brandon Powell is the WR2, when in reality, Powell should probably be the WR4 on most teams.
Before I go to the next question, I just want to say sorry for my wrong sentence, because I am very nervous. And I'm not as fluent as my friend Enrique here, but I am
Oh
trying
no,
to
you're
improve,
fine, man.
okay?
Mhm. I don't even know what wrong
So
sentence you're talking about, though.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
So how the presence of Aaron Jones can help improve the running game?
All right, here's where I'm at on Jones. Was it a Tuesday? The Tuesday of free agency, when I saw that he signed, I did not understand it because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Moneyball general manager, usually those guys stay away from old running backs, and Aaron Jones is going to be 30 in December. So I was like, well, they know better than me. That's fine. $7 million. We can do that. But I've gradually warmed up to it, because the alternative was to roll into it with Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride and what other bum you were going to sign for RB2. So the reason I like the Aaron Jones move now, much more than I did on March 12th or whatever it was, is it proves to me that they know there's a problem with the running backs. Like, they realize that you can't finish in the bottom 6 or bottom 7 of rushing efficiency every year. I don't know if they knew that. I don't know if they knew that, because Alexander Mattison started over and over last year, and they seemed to be complacent or content with it. Now, when you sign Aaron Jones for $7 million, it shows to the world, like, we know there's a problem. We went and got this guy who's really good to fix it. So give us time. Last year, their solution was to get Josh Oliver as a blocking tight end and promote Alexander Mattison. I like this setup more, because even if Aaron Jones gets hurt, you'll still get some amount of gains from him. And I think that can help, remedy the play calling. They realize that has to get a little bit more creative. And then one of my bold predictions on, I haven't even published yet, is by the time the regular season is over, whether it's injury or promotion, I think Ty Chandler will have more rushing carries and rushing yards than Aaron Jones.
So it's
Spoiler alert. Now that we're near the end of the interview, said we have 45 minutes. So can we just go a little more? We have,
absolutely.
I think, just 3 or 4 questions. I think this is the most serious question that I have to ask you, the serious stone question. How worse is the Jordan Addison's DUI just a week after Curry Jackson passed away because of a drunk driver? And what do you think will happen to Addison, like suspension-wise? If you think he's going to be suspended, he's going to just be fine? Just wanted your input on that.
So I don't know that it was a alcohol related DUI. I think we're going to learn details about whether or not, like, they didn't even mention his BAC at all in the police report, which is really weird. And then he was out of their custody within 2 hours, which was also weird. So it could have been something like marijuana instead of alcohol. Not that that excuses everything. Well, of course it's a bad optic or it's a bad look. This is like almost to the day. This is the like the July version of Jordan Addison. Nope, we don't want that guy. That guy, no thanks. With the reckless driving, and then this thing in California with blocking freeway traffic asleep. None of it is good. Let's just put it that way. But I'm a recovered alcoholic. I haven't drank in 12 years. I work a program in recovery. And sometimes when I'm on social media, it really bugs me the way people are so self-righteous. They're like, oh, cut that son of a bitch. Like you're a human too, and you make a lot of mistakes. So I don't understand why as sports fan we get so self-righteous about stuff. So in terms of, somebody that would come on your show as a guest to talk about Jordan Addison, I'm going to be more lenient than most because, I was an stone cold drunk for a decade of my life. So I know how certain people have problems and they get into trouble. And I'm not going to cast judgment on Jordan Addison's entire life. I would guess, without seeing the details, that it'll probably be some sort of suspension, unless it's just a giant misunderstanding, which it probably isn't. I would say, somewhere in that 3-game range. You have to send a message because you can't just let the guy keep getting off scot-free. Really thought he learned his lesson last year with the reckless driving thing. But the guy is 22. I'm really glad my life wasn't under a microscope when I was 22. I just wish that sports fans on the whole, you can still, decry or say, hey, of course, drunk driving is awful and these guys should be held accountable. But we don't have to get on our high horse every single time somebody makes a mistake and say, like, oh, I can't believe this bonehead keeps doing this. Star Tribune has an article about he's the most knuckleheaded wide receiver in Vikings history. It's like, yeah, we get it. So I'm waiting for the details to come out. And if he's suspended, so be it. But I don't think that the Vikings are going to cut him, nor do I think he's a terrible, rotten guy. I think he just needs somebody, a mentor or somebody to get a hold of him and say, you got to cut this shit out, man, or you're going to lose it all.
Yeah, we were talking before you got here. I said that I think, like, just make him talk with Curry Jackson's family.
Mm-hmm.
No, it don't have to be Curry Jackson, but like it happened to a teammate of his. Just talk to their family. I think this will really help him get not situated, but like understand why this is such a dangerous thing.
Yeah,
because it wasn't the Jackson's friend that were drunk and drove. It was another person, and he could drink and drive and not come out without scratch, but another person could die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned about a mentor. Maybe bring back Adam Thielen.
Yeah,
just
the thing about Adam Thielen.
Air.
Adam Thielen's been like walking or acting and talking like a Viking for like the last 6 weeks. Like he's on K-Fan talking about how McCarthy's real. He's working out with McCarthy. And don't look now, the Panthers have 2 new wide receivers in Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette. So usually when I hear Vikings fans talk about a reunion with a player or some trade, I'm always like, what are we thinking? But the Adam Thielen one actually makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it will also help solidify the wide receiver 3 spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Brandon
Yeah.
Powell will become the wide receiver 4. It's everything perfect for
Yeah,
this.
the only reason
Yeah, I mean,
the only reason that Thielen left last year, the Vikings didn't want to pay the 20 million or whatever it was, is because we deemed that he was no longer a WR2. But nobody said anything that he couldn't be WR3. So I don't know if he would get cut. Probably not by the Panthers. And generally speaking, a trade probably won't happen. But it does make sense if you want Adam Thielen to come back to the Vikings, it does make sense. And I'll say that if he was traded from the Panthers, it probably would be to the Vikings.
This is our next two last questions. They are we have done it to everyone. I think these are our staple questions. And we have to talk about Brazil, of course. This is a Brazilian Portuguese, and this is a guest from the United States. Our first question is for the first time in NFL history, there will be a game played here in Brazil, in South America, in São Paulo. So what are our opinions on a game being played in Brazil? Just so I think distant reality from the US, and the league's attempts to be more of an international brand. We have games in Germany, in London, in Mexico, and the stadium is finally repaired. Now in Brazil, next year there will be a game in Spain. So what's your input on that?
Oh, I think it is fantastic. Like anytime the sport can grow, they really latched on to London, and then was it 2 or 3 straight years in Germany, and then they tried it a little bit in Mexico City. It gets a little dicey there with the field or whatever. But yeah, it sucks that the Packers have to be the team that's coming there. But
Yeah.
Yes, the Vikings.
yeah,
God
it was
damn
like
it.
I thought of you guys when I saw that matchup came out. I was like, oh boy, that what is it? What was the messaging app that I was on with you guys for a while?
WhatsApp.
Yeah, what's that? I was like, oh, I bet you
Yeah,
that's
that's it.
popping that they had to pick the damn Packers. No, on the whole, expansion into South America, especially as a new viable market, is awesome. So I hope that it goes really well. I know that South Americans get a little rowdy with soccer. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't do that with football.
Just a little bit. And
So,
we also mentioned, sorry, Gabriel, just one thing. We also like to
Okay.
mention that the internet was being more of an international brand.
Mm-hmm.
We always mention Davi Belfort. He's the son of Vitor Belfort, the UFC legend, and he's going to Virginia Tech to be quarterback. I think this year.
Oh, really?
So he could be the first Brazilian quarterback in the NFL. I think it would be the second player to be on a roster. We always like to mention David Belfort because he's our hope to check the NFL for the NFL to get a lot bigger here in Brazil.
I hear you. Is he a freshman there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
No, I don't know much
So the
about
last
him.
That's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The last question is about Brazil. So, what do you know about Brazil? Might be a word or a food, a city, or if you don't know, we can teach you something.
Probably. Let's see. My son is really big into flags and countries right now, and he told me some stat that from the north to the south of Brazil is further than like the ocean to, is it Portugal or something like that? Or is it Liberia? It's longer across the ocean from Brazil than it is the ocean. I'll have to ask him. I'm bungling this fact, but it's something like that.
I think I know that one. I think it's the northmost point is further away from the southmost point. Then it's closer to, I think, Toronto or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that, and then let's see I'm trying to think. There's 2 movies. Is it City of God? That's from Brazil. Yeah, that's
no man,
Great
that's
movie.
awesome.
yeah. That's one of my, I'd say probably top 25 movies. I haven't watched it in about 10 years, but that one's up there. And then with the Olympics coming up, it'll be sweet to see how they do. So you educate me now. What did I miss?
Go on, Gabriel.
You can teach him something. It's
Okay.
your guest.
I always try to pick different things. I'm going to, as you're my friend, I'm going to mention two things.
Mhm.
Remove a movie that I think was maybe, I think if I should have got to be one of the best Brazilian movies ever, to me at least, is Auto da Compadecida. I'll send you in Twitter later just how it's written. Great movie, like really great movie. It's
Yeah.
funny, really funny. You're going to laugh a lot, but it actually showcases a lot of things about the Brazilian Northeast. Yeah, it's a really beautiful movie. I think you're going to like it. And a singer. I was watching a video earlier today, and they mentioned him. And I was like, man, I'm going to talk about this man to Dustin. Is Tim Maia.
Okay.
He's again really great. I'm going to send you the names after. Just really great songs. His voice is amazing. It's really out of this world. I
Mhm.
think you're going to enjoy it. So the movie is Auto da Compadecida, and the singer Tim Maia.
Okay. Yeah, send me the name of both of those.
Okay, I'll send you.
So that's it, man. I hope you enjoy it. And
Oh, absolutely.
you can. Yeah, I hope you can back in the future too. Maybe in a rotation, like you said.
Yeah, you should hit me up. Let's see, we're right before training camp. You should hit me up in about maybe 5 weeks, right before the regular season, and we can chat about predictions or whatever.
Okay, put it in our schedule already because we will.
All right, cool. All right, guys,
Yeah,
thanks.
of course we will.
We'll talk to you next time, okay?
Okay, Dustin, thank you
Okay,
so
thank you
much,
so
man.
much.